Members of Parliament are here in studio with me to talk about this. With me now, Environment and Climate Change Parliamentary Secretary Adam Van Koeverden, Deputy Conservative Leader Melissa Lantsman, and NDP Natural Resources Critic Charlie Angus. Hello to all of you. Thank you so much for making time for the discussion. Mr. Van Koeverden, I'll start with you. And my first question is, over the weekend, Minister Hutchings said that if people in other parts of the country elected more Liberals, they could have a conversation about possible carve-outs in the future. Today, multiple federal ministers and the Prime Minister slammed the door on that. What changed in the interim?
Well, I think this the program's been mischaracterized as one that's just for Atlantic Canada. Mr. Angus and I were talking on the way in. We both have lots of constituents that use home heating oil, and this applies to them too. We're removing the carbon levy on home heating oil, which is a product, not a region. And the members of my community in Campbellville, for example, who aren't on the natural gas line, they've been using home heating oil for years. And I had one email me today and say, I would like to have access to the same kind of heat pump program. And gratefully there is one, because that is open to any province that is willing to work with us to co-deliver the heat pump program and get people off of home heating oil. Home heating oil is the dirtiest way to heat your home. It's an 1800s style way of heating a building, and we can do better, so we will.
Sure, but are you being disingenuous in the way that you're presenting that? The portion of people in Ontario or homes in Ontario which are primarily relying on oil to heat their homes is less, I believe, than 5%. In provinces in Atlantic Canada, particularly PEI, for example, and I think Nova Scotia, it's much higher. It's their primary source of home heating. So this is clearly geared toward those constituencies.
This is geared towards lower-income Canadians that use home heating oil as their prime source of heating their homes.
Which are mostly in Atlantic Canada.
Fine, but there are more Ontarians that use home heating oil than there are Atlantic Canadians that use home heating oil. So,
but that's disingenuous. That's because the population of Ontario is so much greater than Atlantic Canada.
It helps a lot of my constituents. And for every single constituent that can get off of home heating oil and into using a heat pump to heat their home, that's better for the environment, it's better for their health, and it's also a lot better for their checkbooks. Because home heating oil is expensive for a lot of reasons, mostly because of the war in Europe. It's a dirty, unhealthy, expensive way to heat your home, and we want to help Canadians heat their home with a heat pump instead.
So let's follow that logic for a second. Why are you making it cheaper for them to use it over the next 3 years?
Well, it's about working together and collaborating. You know, we understand that home heating oil is just skyrocketed in prices. It's for a lot of reasons, like I said, global pressure on the market, but it's also a dirty old product that we want to do away with. Our government's been successful in phasing out coal across this country, and I, for one, somebody who breathes in Ontario, is very grateful that previous Liberal governments in Ontario phased out coal. So we have cleaner air as a result. This move will clean the air across Canada in a similar way, right at home.
You are making it cheaper for people to use home heating for the next 3 years by pausing the carbon tax on oil, right? You're making that oil that you just described as so dirty cheaper. Yes, you are incentivizing converting to a heat pump. Why couldn't you just do that instead of pausing the carbon tax? Doesn't that show Canadians how political it was?
Well, like you said, it's the vast majority of people that use home heating oil are also lower income. Actually, fully half of the people in Atlantic Canada that use home heating oil are lower income. So we're disproportionately helping people with their bills. We're meeting the moment at a time where affordability and fighting climate change are dual priorities, and our government's been focused on achieving both of those goals. We want to be able to we want to incentivize people to get a heat pump, and that's why we're getting free heat pumps into the homes of Atlantic Canadians, as well as people from other provinces whose provinces and provincial governments want to work to co-deliver this program.
Okay, I want to bring in your colleagues, but you are also pausing the carbon tax for 3 years on heating oil. Ms. Lantsman, your party has been very critical of the carbon tax and of the move right now, and that's saying that it should apply to other parts of the country. Why should Canadians, though, take your concerns about the way in which the government attacks climate change seriously when you have presented no plan of your own?
Well, we'll have a plan when we face the electorate, and we're happy to face the electorate with the question of the carbon tax. This is a political move. It is an abject failure of policy, something that the government said that was revenue neutral, that is now adversely affecting Canadians to the point where they've got to cancel it on a certain subsect of Canadians, ones that live in Atlantic Canada, because their polling numbers are low. It is incoherent in terms of a policy response, because they're now taking the carbon tax off of something that they claim is dirtier and punishing those who heat with gas. This is a Liberal policy that is incoherent. It is political, and it is about the fortunes of the Prime Minister, who is not doing well in Atlantic Canada, and this is about saving the furniture.
Isn't it, though, a year ago, the motion that your party put forward to do exactly this?
We've consistently put forward motions to cancel the carbon tax. There is
no, the motion that you put forward a
party-
year ago, pardon the interruption, the motion you put forward a year ago was to remove the carbon tax specifically from home heating oil.
right across the country, from all of home heating. And we'll do that. We will support that. We will support taking off the carbon tax for every single Canadian. What the Prime Minister now is there's two classes of Canadians, and he's dividing them based on where they live. And if they live in a place that elects Liberals, where his polling numbers are low, you get one deal. And if they live somewhere else and they heat with another source of heat, you don't get a deal. And this is inconsistent across the country.
I understand the point about inconsistency, but that doesn't answer the question that I started with, which is you are expecting Canadians to take your party as the most credible criticism of what the government is doing. But what the government is doing is aimed at tackling climate change. Yet you have not presented, I know you say you're going to face the electorate
Absolutely.
at some point, but your leader talks about becoming prime minister. How can you talk about that without even saying, I won't do this, but I will do this?
Our policy is clear. We are going to take off the carbon tax for every single Canadian, no matter where you live, whether you elect Liberals in your riding, whether you live in Atlantic Canada, or whether you live in Alberta or Yukon.
That's just what you won't do.
And we're going to work to make green energy more affordable, not traditional energy more expensive. And we'll have a plan when we face the electorate that says exactly that.
When? Like, you're not going to release that?
Well, I guess it's up to these guys on when they want to break their coalition and call an election.
So we will have to wait to the campaign.
You'll have to wait till the campaign.
Okay, I have more questions for you about that, but Mr. Angus, I want to bring you into the conversation as well. Your provincial counterparts in both Alberta and Saskatchewan are supportive of their Conservative premiers in the actions that they've determined they want to take in response to what the feds have said. They are supportive of actions like in Saskatchewan of not collecting the carbon tax anymore as of January 31st because natural gas will not get a carve out from the carbon pricing policy. Do you support them?
Well, I think what we saw here is that this rollout was a desperate gong show, and I think it's created this kind of needless animosity. We have two issues right now. We have a climate catastrophe. Again, that's something Pierre Poilievre's not interested in talking about. We had 200,000 people dislocated this summer, 60% of small businesses directly affected by the climate crisis. So people want to know, what's the plan and how are we going to deal with this? But at the same time, people can't afford to pay their bills. So New Democrats, and again, long before the carbon tax fight with the Conservatives, we've been saying, let's take the HST off home heating because heating isn't a luxury. It's not a luxury in Prince Edward Island. It's not a luxury in Timmins James Bay. It's not a luxury in northern Saskatchewan. How you would do that would be the fall economic statement. The government could have come out and said, listen, we have an affordability crisis. We are going to take the HST off home heating to get people through the winter. Meanwhile, we're actually going to start making the people who are causing the climate catastrophe pay. We just had a PBO report on big oil. I mean, they've been gouging us. They've been destroying the planet. We could get billions. We have to shift where the blame is and shift the cost. But instead, what we got was a desperate attempt to shore up MPs in Atlantic Canada, which has rightfully put people in the rest of the country saying, whoa, 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 what about us?
So you do agree with your provincial counterparts in Alberta and Saskatchewan in taking the kinds of actions that they're describing?
I think that our position has been that home heating is not a luxury. When it's minus 45, you've got to heat your home. So giving people a break on that anywhere in the country is reasonable. But if you're going to do that, you have to have a very solid, credible climate plan, which of course the Conservatives don't have, and that would mean actually going after the people who are burning the planet. That's the windfall tax that we've been pushing for on big oil, that they actually have to start paying for some of the damage.
I read from that, though, that you're not supportive of what your provincial counterparts are doing, that you think that the solution does not lie, for example, in not collecting the carbon tax.
The issue of the carbon tax is an important tool. But the issue of taking tax off home heating is a reasonable response to the climate to the affordability crisis.
The analysis I've read is about $107 a year for a family heating their home. Do you think that's enough to make a dent? I know it's something,
well,
but
actually,
to make a dent
again, we've said the HST, and for people that I know who can't afford to pay with their heating, that would make a big difference right now. It's the same fight that we had on grocery giants. I mean, Pierre Poilievre's been nothing on taking on the grocery giants. The Liberal government said they'd talk to them. We're saying bring these guys back. They've been ripping people off.
How much would it save a family, though?
Well, I think if we took off HST when you're paying 15% on your fuel bill every month, that would save a bit. And that bit may be the difference. I mean, we're not in the business of being able to say everyone's getting free heat, but we also have to say it's reasonable that people shouldn't have to be broke, heating their homes in the winter when they can't afford to pay their groceries, when they're also expecting the government to have a credible climate plan. And the way the Prime Minister handled this whole carbon tax thing is to say, we're desperate in Atlantic Canada, we're going to throw a bunch of stuff at it, as opposed to saying, let's talk about a national vision. Without that national vision, we're in trouble.
Okay, I have time for one quick comment from each of you, and I'm going to pick up on that point and ask you, Mr. Van Koeverden. Imagine living right now in Alberta and Saskatchewan. How could you not feel like the Prime Minister is picking favorites and making life more affordable for certain Canadians versus you?
Well, to be clear, there are Albertans and people that live in Saskatchewan that use home heating oil.
It's so disingenuous. It's such a few percent. It's so few
well,
of them.
we're removing it's a dirty, dirty product that we need to get rid of, you know, so it's important to focus on that. But I will give Ms. Lantsman credit and her Conservatives. They've been extremely clear with Canadians what their plan is on fighting climate change. They won't even say climate change in the House of Commons. All of their anytime they bring up anything with respect to climate change, it's just axe the tax, which is not a credible climate change policy. And they all ran on a promise with Aaron O'Toole to have a very, very similar carbon tax and a very similar fuel standard, clean fuel standard.
So how does that take away from, I understand, and that's my line of questioning to the Conservatives, but that doesn't take away from the concerns that other Canadians have right now, that your government is only helping out people who elect Liberals.
That's not true. That's absolutely not the case. We are focused on home heating oil and getting rid of home heating oil as a source of home heating in Canada because it's dirty, it's unhealthy, and it's too expensive. And let's focus on the expensive part because natural gas isn't that expensive. It's costing Atlantic Canadians like upwards of $5,000 and $6,000 a year to heat their home. And you know, before we get to that, it's not because of the price on pollution. It's because, and it's cost that much before in Atlantic Canada before they had it last year. The problem is home heating oil has gotten way too pricey. So we're going to get rid of it and get Canadians on a heat pump, which is more affordable, it's more reliable, it's less expensive, and it's way better for the environment.
Last 2 points to both of you, Ms. Lantsman. It is disproportionately more expensive right now in Atlantic Canada to heat your home, or if you're using oil elsewhere, although the percentages are far less. Does Mr. Van Koeverden not have a point
It says to Canadians that the Prime Minister decides which Canadians he decides to help based on where his polling numbers are low and who votes for him. We heard that right from the ministers. We heard that right from the minister's mouth over the weekend, right here with you. She said, if you vote more Liberals, you'll get a deal from these others. That creates
we can have a conversation.
Two classes of Canadians who pay different taxes based on where they live and where the Prime Minister is struggling. This is political. And I will say that the carbon tax, Mr. Van Koeverden knows that they haven't hit a single environmental target that they themselves have set.
Well, that's a complicated thing because
with
carbon taxes,
it's markedly,
well, hold on. With carbon taxes, that's a whole other discussion. But essentially, it's difficult to measure the exact impact because it's how much worse it could have been.
What is very clear is that this is a tax plan and not an environmental plan. And now the chickens are coming home to roost or whatever.
I have to go to Mr. Angus. Last word to you. Look, I know that the contention is that this is a political decision, but does Mr. Van Koeverden have a point that perhaps it's policy based on where the greatest need lies?
Well, listen, people who are on home heating oil tend to be poor. They're rural. They need a break. But you know what? You can't make it seem so desperate that you're more interested in supporting Liberals in Atlantic Canada than those people. Rural Canadians are having a hell of a time. And also, and I can say
this. They got
a
rebate, though. They got a doubling of the rebate.
It's about fairness, and people are paying a lot, but that fairness has to be tied into the fact that we're burning our climate and we're burning our future, and we're not taking that on. The Conservatives refuse to take that on, and the Liberals, as my colleague says, keep missing their targets. Canadians expect action, and so that's what we expect from the Prime Minister. Instead, it's these one-off deals, and it's making people upset, and we got to do better as a country.
Okay, I have to leave it there. I appreciate all of you making time for the discussion. I'm sure it's one we'll continue to have over the coming days and weeks. Thank you so much to Charlie Angus, Melissa Lantsman, and Adam Van Koeverden.